Hello, and welcome to Quick Tips for Grant Writing with the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. In today's program, we will highlight the following. We'll do a brief overview, planning your grant writing process more effectively. We'll cover some persuasion techniques and some advice ideas, storytelling principles, proofreading tips, goal setting tips, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it all up. A strong grant proposal should be very clear and concise, as well as compelling. You want to make sure that you provide just enough detail that the funder understands your project and can really see that you thought things through. Be careful not to get too wordy though. Your grant proposal should also tell a story that really helps your funder relate to your project. So let's talk about how to plan your grant proposals more effectively. Make sure that you meet all of the requirements, such as eligibility, geographic area, alignment with your priorities and those of the funder. And remember, this is for any grant, not just what is provided here at the Food Bank of the Southern Tier. Following directions also applies to how you answer grant proposal questions. Read prompts thoroughly and make sure that you actually answer them appropriately. For example, if the question asks, describe the community that you serve, and it might include demographics, location, etc. You really want to make sure that you're covering all of those high points. Following directions provided by the funder will help you effectively plan out your grant proposal, so make sure you understand all of the directions before you begin writing. If you are unclear, reach out to the funder for clarification. Map out your goals. Goals are super important to grant proposal. Having clear goals that follow the SMART goal idea and method will help you make your grant proposal even stronger. We'll cover SMART goals a little bit later on. Make sure you're allocating your time wisely. Grant writing takes time, especially if you want to write a very strong proposal that has really good odds of getting funded. Properly allocating your time is so critical to your grant writing process that this might be the biggest tip that we can provide you with today. And do your research. If this is an external funder, not the Food Bank of the Southern Tier, you really want to know what grants previously were funded, what were the project ideas. That way you know specifically how you should proceed. If you know a specific type of grant is more likely to be funded by a particular funder, that's the way you want to go. With the Food Bank of the Southern Tier, research might include making sure you're grabbing all of the required quotes. Make sure you're doing all your due diligence to get all the information for any equipment that's being requested or quotes that you need to supply. Research is critical. A grant writing tip for beginners is to remember that grants are heavily based on relationships. Having a past relationship with a funder is only one way to help your proposal stand out. In order to establish and keep these relationships with funders, you need to make sure that you follow all of the requirements when you receive a grant. This helps you build a good rapport with the funder and knows that you are a reliable grantee. So you really want to make use of those relationships. If you don't have a good relationship because you haven't fulfilled all the necessary requirements in the past, it doesn't hurt to start now. Make sure going forward that you are clearly understanding all the requirements of any grant that you apply for and that you follow it to the letter. Funders also look for very strong community partnerships between nonprofits and other nonprofits, or just other community programs and agencies and stakeholders in your area. They see types of projects as opportunities to get more bang for their buck. And that includes us here at the food bank. We want to know that the resources we're putting out in the community is going to have the best or the greatest return on investment. We want to make sure that the impact is going to be substantial. Another persuasion technique that might just help your grant proposal stand out is explaining why your organization is the best qualified to carry out your idea. Include information about past successes that you may have had, describe the qualifications of your staff that specifically relate to this project. And then another really good idea, or another quick tip, is to make sure that you're using the project budget to demonstrate how you really will leverage all of your funds that you are requesting. And not just leveraging the funds that you request in a particular grant, but how you're leveraging them in combination with additional resources. That could be other grants, other sponsorships, in-kind donations, your volunteer hours, or just a budget line at your program, at your agency. Funders really appreciate seeing that they are not the only funding source for the project. This tells us that you are committed to getting the job done and that you see value in it, so that we will see value in it as a funder. It's very simple. Grant writing is simply storytelling. Grant proposals need to explain why your nonprofit deserves to be funded. So sell it, make the case. This is your chance to toot your horn and tell the world, or just the funder, all the amazing things that you do at your program. And how much of a great story is it going to be if you get this grant and you can make this impact? Really call it out. And then your story, it just needs to provide enough detail about how you demonstrate that you really are the best fit to complete the project and that you really do deserve these funds. Find a way to compel the funder by using emotive languages, or rather emotive words, that really will kind of like pull at our heartstrings a little bit. Funders are in this to make a difference in the community. So if you know what's really at the heart of a funder, what really inspires their want to hand out funds in support of your programs, then call on it. So for the food bank, don't just tell us that this allows us to get more food out to people, or this allows us to distribute more food. Tell us why that's important. What really is the impact on that family that's receiving the food, the extra food that you're able to hand out? We want to know deeper. And by helping us reviewers form this emotional connection to your program, to this project, it really will help your application stand out. It's even possible to do this with the most dry and unemotionally connected information. And one way to do that is with data. Data are just numbers. It's a quantitative way of telling a story, but it's important because you can combine your qualitative and your quantitative, which means combine your numbers with the story it's telling, with the impact it's making. For example, if you are serving 400 households a month, that's your data. Now build on that and say those 400 households are able to access groceries from your program that allows them to use what little discretionary funds that they have to perhaps pay a car payment, to pay their rent, to put an extra payment on a car, maybe to pay down their medical bills. All those things that we know that food can't fix. We know that we can't fund somebody's rent. But if they can get groceries from you, they can use those extra resources perhaps to help cover their rent. Things of that nature. So that's taking data and combining it with the storytelling. And then the last thing I'll leave you with around storytelling is it's okay to admit that you don't have all the answers or that there are potential challenges that you see in the future. This really helps you stay authentic and down to earth, and you are firmly poised in reality. You're not living in this great idea, the big wide sky. You really do see the challenges ahead. But you're not backing down, you're approaching them. These are your challenges. You're not sure how you're going to do it, but you're going to keep, problem solving until you find a way through it. Grant makers, funders really appreciate honesty from applicants. And one of those ways that help you keep your credibility is by owning up to that idea that you don't have all the answers, you don't have all the fixes, but you're going to keep working towards the greater good. All right, let's cover some proofreading tips. Many grant proposals will ask for both a project and a budget narrative. And one of the easy ways to make sure that you are doing this well is to ensure that both of those narratives are kind of telling the same story. It's one thing if your project narrative and your budget narrative don't really align. And that tells us as funders that you're not really sure what you're doing. So make sure that you're telling the same story. Check your math. This one is a critical and often overlooked area for proofreading. Double check your math, even if it automatically calculates it for you. Pull out your calculator and do it yourself. Grab a pencil, do it longhand. Make sure that the math is correct. Check the grammar and spelling. The best way to check your grammar and spelling is have somebody else read it. I can never catch my own, no matter how many times I read it. Even reading it out loud, you can catch some of it, but you won't catch all of it. Have someone else come in and review it and read it and catch those grammar mistakes. Because let's face it, we all make them. There's that narrative alignment, so critical to this entire process of storytelling. And then it never hurts to get that outside perspective. Sometimes we get caught up so much in the weeds, in the details, and the fine print that we're missing the big picture, and it's not making sense in the big scheme of things. So get somebody who is not part of your program, who doesn't work in the little world that we work in, and have them read it. Have them make sense of it. And this is for any grant that you write. And how is this going to impact your HIPNAP grant here? It's critically going to impact it because we have folks that have never been part of the HIPNAP world reviewing these applications. They are completely anonymous. They have never been part of this world. So they really do have that outside perspective. So if you can get somebody to review it before you submit it, you're one step ahead. And take their advice to heart. Goal setting will help you follow through clearly and with a very clean lens of where you're going with a project. Some of the food bank grant applications do require you to have that forward-thinking mindset, but not all of them. But I can promise you, External funders are going to want to know, where's this leading you down the road? How are you going to evaluate? So set yourself a SMART goal. These are not just goals, but they're clearly having tasks within itself so they are attainable. Make a clear plan for evaluation. How are you going to determine if your project was a success or it wasn't, and maybe you guys need to think a little bit more outside the box next time? Or maybe you just need to change something. So have that clear plan for evaluation. Many of the food bank grants, we will support you in the evaluation process, but outside of the food bank, that isn't always going to happen. You're going to have to create it yourself. And then keep it straightforward. Don't go over the top with embellishments or lofty goals or highbrow things that you're going to reach for. Keep it attainable. And now back to those SMART goals. It is a goal that is very specific. You can measure it. So by having it be specific and measurable, you can achieve it. And is it relevant? If you have a goal that has nothing to do with your project except that it sounds good, that's not relevant. And last but not least, make sure it's timely. If you have a goal set for 5 years down the road, that's great, but are there smaller goals within that longer goal that you can work on that can actually be your SMART goals? So keep it smart. And just to pull it all back together is a quick reminder that grant writing is simply storytelling. This is where you have the opportunity to make the case. Tell the story of your agency to anyone who will listen, and if you're lucky, they'll give you some funds to help you keep doing the things that you do best, which is help your community. And that's a wrap. Thank you.